We're talking about today about Freaky Deaky, published in 1988. This comes after a string of bestsellers that Elmore has been on the list for his last few novels.
Alex, I don't want to
And
interrupt, but I
yeah,
do want
what's
to
up,
tell
man?
everyone that this is the Elmore Leonard podcast, and I'm Judd, and this is Alex, and we're talking
Oh yeah,
about this spectacular Freaky Deaky. Sorry, go ahead.
that's right. Welcome to the Elmore Leonard podcast. Today we're talking about Freaky Deaky, published in 1988. This comes after a string of Elmore bestsellers. This is another book that kind of references and comes out of Elmore's nonfiction piece for the Detroit News called Impressions of Murder. He actually pulled the title from one of the detectives talking about the deadly dance, the Freaky Deaky. Similar to City Primeval, that book also uses a lot of the details and kind of character
Yeah.
and background. But City Primeval was years before. That was kind of the start of the decade, and this is more toward the end.
I would say, and we don't have to solve this today, and I know I'm throwing you off course just as we're getting started, so feel free to shoot me down. But do you think City Primeval or Freaky Deaky, Swag, or something else is the most Detroit of the Detroit novels?
I mean, I don't know, because Swag, it's mostly suburbs. This one is pretty Detroit, like the Woody and Mark's house is Detroit. I mean, because then, yeah, there's a book like Split Images, which is a lot of Detroit, but it also has some Florida stuff.
Right.
Maybe City Primeval is pretty Detroit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right.
That
Well,
might be the winner. Or Mr. Paradise, maybe.
all right. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there, everybody. Sorry to cut you off, Alex. Please. I don't know where I cut you off, but I'm
Sure, I was
hoping.
kind of referencing. We have some returning characters from City Primeval as well. There's detectives Wendell Robinson and Maureen Downey.
Yes.
There's also a mention of Ray Cruz, who's the main guy in City Primeval, and he also, again, we mentioned him in our Out of Sight episode.
Correct.
And just a couple, yeah, there's a guy named Nor Brill, and there's another detective named Hunter who are also mentioned. So for people who've read City Primeval, it's, fun to see these characters pop up again. For those who haven't, you wouldn't even notice it.
Right.
We also have a connection to Out of Sight with the character Moselle, who appears just a couple of times in here.
Yes. She starts off the book, and I don't know what happened in the ensuing years, and we sort of talked about this when we covered Out of Sight, but this is a different Moselle than the one we meet in Out of Sight, who's hooked up with Kenneth and Snoopy. This Moselle is in charge. She is ordering her man, Booker, around. She calls him up on the phone and she tells him to sit his ass down.
Yeah, I mean, when she tells the story in Out of Sight, it does feel a little different. But she seems directly involved in it, and in Out of Sight, she's kind of talking about it like, it's something that happened to her.
Yeah, well, she talks about in Out of Sight. I mean, she's just been hooked up with a series of not great dudes. Whatever's going on with Moselle, it doesn't seem like she had great role models growing up when it came to relationships. Yeah, so we start in Booker's mansion. We start with it's Chris Mankowski's last day on the bomb squad. He's a Detroit cop, and he's been called to go check out a little situation. There's a drug dealer named Booker who lives in an old mansion that he has done up in his own unique style. Some would say circus style, but he he's having a pretty good day. The phone rings. His girl Moselle tells him to sit down. He does, and she basically tells him, "Well, guess what? When you move, you will explode. Goodbye." So we start off, I mean, we're not quite with a bang because we got to get there, but it's a great opening chapter. It's been ripped off We talked about that in our conversation with Tom Sharpling, among other people. I think the Scott Frank, he referenced how this has been paid homage to in so many different ways. But we have a bad guy
This
sitting
is a
on.
rare one, though, where it wasn't just ripped off. It actually cost Elmore an adaptation. They had a Freaky Deaky movie in the works, and as soon as Lethal Weapon 2 comes out, which replaces the chair with a toilet, but the same kind of thing. If you stand up, you blow up, and they had to scrap their version of Freaky Deaky at the time.
It was I believe that was with Richard Brooks, who was going to direct it, and he directed some great studio movies in the 60s and 70s. At this point, some of our conversations are blurring together. I assure you, I've had nothing but coffee to drink today. But I think we talked a little bit about this with Michael Siegel, and he talked about how Richard Brooks saw it and basically walked away because, I mean, it's crazy. And I guess
But it's also the opening scene. I could imagine, an audience is sitting down for a movie and they're presented with something that has just come out.
Yeah,
They would
I mean,
assume that this is copying.
it's fair, but I think the rest of the book and these characters are so good that, I mean, number one, people forget. I mean, by the time, if he saw the movie before they were in production, it probably would have been at least 2 years. Sure, some people might say that, and they could be reminded, actually, you know what? Elmore did it first.
It's also, I feel like you could have, lose the scene and not miss too much. We'll talk about it later, but the way the opening scene slots into the rest of the book is kind of curious.
It is curious, and it's a mystery that I don't know if it's ever solved. It's not.
I've compared it to The Big Sleep, where the
Yeah.
chauffeur is murdered, and someone asked Raymond Chandler about it. Hey, who killed this guy? And he's like, I don't know. So there's some crimes that aren't immediately solved or not connected, and that's good. I think it lends a little bit of realism, even if it's at first seems just like a bizarre coincidence that
Yeah.
it's not just another bomb, it's that they know these people as well.
Right. So we have Chris, it's his last day on the bomb squad. He gets there. One of his colleagues, Jerry and Chris go in and they take a look, and he's in trouble. He can't move. Chris snoops around. He's got a very sharp knife. He's got a flashlight. It's not just one or two sticks of dynamite under there. It is enough to blow Booker to bits.
It's 10 sticks.
10 sticks, which, I don't know what the ratio is, but I figure one stick of dynamite should be enough to take somebody out. You think that's fair? Or would that just
I have
maim?
no idea. What's funny about this, I mentioned the impressions of murder thing. That was Elmore going around with homicide.
Yeah.
And so this with the bomb squad, he went back to Detroit bomb. He went to the Detroit bomb squad and hung out with these guys for a while. And one of the things he said, if I wanted to make a bomb or if I wanted information on making a bomb, how would I find that? And one of the bomb squad guys handed him the anarchist cookbook.
He just had it on him.
Yeah, he's just like, here you go.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I remember when the anarchist cookbook was in libraries.
Was it?
Yeah. You could find it in a couple of libraries.
Oh, I should mention too that that Impressions of Murder piece, we've mentioned it a couple times in different episodes. It's really great. It used to just be archived on the Detroit News site. You could read it for free, but that link is since dead. But it is copied in the Library of America's 80s collection that they put out. So that's a supplement for the Elmore in the 80s book, and totally worth reading.
It's fantastic. This is something that comes up a lot on the podcast. There will be something in the course of doing a book or doing. I mean, in this case, it was writing an article that just sort of pulls Elmore off in a different direction, and fascinates him for a little while, and he digs into it, and we get a lot of great books out of it. All right, let's get back to chapter 1.
Yeah. Well, we've got Booker. He's sitting on the chair with the bomb. Chris's last day, and Chris and Jerry, the other cop, are being kind of flippant with him, which in a way is foreshadowing kind of Chris's attitude through the rest of the book. He doesn't
Yeah,
seem to take it that seriously, which is kind of funny.
well, neither of them are taking it that seriously, but I think it's a combination of two things. I think it is number one, there doesn't seem to be a way out of the situation. And number two, they do talk a little bit about Booker's past. Booker may have been featured in the book that was stored in
Oh, in
your
our
old
former
rehearsal
practice
space.
space, because he was a member of Young Boys Incorporated.
Yeah, and so
That's
and
right.
he and we learned very quickly, there's at least a couple of dead bodies in trunks because of Booker, and so they're not in a rush to really help the guy out. They essentially tell everybody working there, stand back. I mean, it's sort of the first time you read it, and I, friends, I got to tell you, if you haven't read the book, go read it and then come back and listen, because the New York Times review says that you could give away the plot and the ending and you wouldn't ruin the book. I believe that 100%. But there's so many good bits, so many good spoilers that, and we're going to talk about them all. So this is your warning.
Yes, you should also listen to our conversation with Tom Sharpling. We focus a lot on the kind of gray area that the characters exist in.
Pretty
And
gray.
yes, and a lot of Elmore characters, especially the bad guys, you can kind of see where they're coming from. Frequently the good guys have kind of their own honor code, or they're operating on a certain level where they do the right thing. And this one is a little different.
I agree with that. I don't know if I feel as strongly about it as Tom did in terms of. I mean, and I think we're really talking about Chris. And I don't think that Chris is. He's not really driving any of the any of these events. He is
Yes.
very much riding along. He's a participant, but he's not driving it. It really is Robin, who we haven't even met yet, but she's driving everything. And she's a dangerous person, but she's not a very, her decision making process is unique to her. And so most of the book is people, one way or another, keeping up with her as she vacillates, as she changes her mind very quickly.
Yes. Yeah, her plan changes like a dozen times throughout the book.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. It's I mean it's really she and Danelle. One of the reasons why Freaky is I really, after rereading it. I mean, we've talked about like our rankings and where things stand. I know we normally don't get into this right away, but Freaky really is my favorite book of
Really?
Elmore's, and I mean it's really yeah. I mean just because of Robin and Danelle.
I
I
mean,
think that
Danelle is top for
he
sure.
is great. Tom didn't care for Danelle as much as we did either, but that's Tom's
I think
problem.
he's like the most, full-fleshed, interesting character. Like, I feel like you learn more about him and you like him more throughout the book, where most of the other characters, the more you learn about them, the more you don't like them.
Yeah, I think he is fantastic. But Chris, I will say this to defend Chris slightly, is that he is operating in a little bit of a no man's land. He is a policeman when he meets him, but as we'll learn, he's not going to be on the
But see, I
force
would
for
argue that
long.
that's why he should be held to a higher standard, because he knows the rules that he's breaking.
All right.
I see. I think this book will be extra fun to talk about. It is a weirder one, and I like that you like it so much. I think that'll make the conversation better.
Well, no pressure. But no, let's. This is just buckle up, everyone, because this is a wild one. Okay. So Chris and Jerry have essentially decided that there's not much that they can do, and they leave Booker alone. They take a little cigarette break. They go outside. We start to hear that Chris's home life isn't as great as he'd like it to be. We hear about his girlfriend Phyllis, how things are going. Some of her positive traits and some of her not so positive traits. That
Well, we
everyone
learn that
seems.
he's transferring because Phyllis is nervous that he's on the bomb squad. She doesn't want him to blow up, and specifically, she doesn't want his hands to blow up.
As they're chit chatting and smoking and you know trying to figure out how to help Booker, Booker's house explodes, and it is very fair and safe to assume that Booker has also expired. It is such a funny moment because Chris and Jerry do not react at all. They just continue their conversation. about Phyllis and, home life. And it is such a great opening to this book. It's super fun. It is super exciting. And
And the following chapter, we are at Mario's Italian restaurant in Detroit, which is still operating today. You can go have a
oh, really?
mediocre Italian meal. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're having some mediocre Italian food. We got Robin and we have Skip, and they have reconnected. They are old flames. They used to be running buddies. They used to be co-conspirators, but they did time. And they're reconnecting after several years of being on the run and then also in prison.
Yeah, they had a history of setting some bombs, doing some kind of like pro hippie, anti cop, anti government kind of demonstrations.
Yeah, they were tearing it all down, and but we meet them and we learn that Skip's in town working on a movie. Right after Booker has been blown to pieces, we meet Skip, who is working on a movie blowing things up. And so that sort of raises the question: oh, is this the guy who was responsible? Is he part potentially of what happened to Booker?
We also learned that Skip has worked in movies, and one of the movies he's been in, he was a foot soldier in some kind of Roman army that gets stabbed over and over and over again. And
Yes.
this is a reference to a short story that Elmore wrote that's in the Charlie Martz collection that came out a few years ago. That the story is called "The Only Good Syrian Foot Soldier is a Dead One." So a lot of times when we're talking about Elmore pulling characters and events from his other novels, those are novels and stuff that were actually published, but this one never saw the light of day, and yet Elmore still couldn't get it out of his head and added it as backstory for a character. I guess it's similar to that Jesus Saves script in the Touch episode, where we
Right.
talked about Bill Hill's background was for an unused script. We find out later, Skip's thinking about this exact scene later, and we find out that the star of the movie that he's acting in is named Steve Walton. And if you remember in our Out of Sight episode, you asked if my aunt had ever dated a cop.
Uh-oh.
And she did, and his name was Steve Walton.
Oh boy.
So we've got Steve Walton's name in the book.
But they only dated. They never got married.
No.
Okay. All right. Well,
So yeah, back at Mario's though, we got Skip and Robin, who are kind of burned out hippies. And that's a big theme of the book, is like what happened to these kind of flower child protesting hippies, like when the 70s and 80s came, like where did they go? So Elmore is trying to say that they've been kind of stuck in the past. That was their high point, and Robin and Skip are trying to rekindle some of that. But they're not just doing it again, to be anti-government or to make a point. Like many ex-hippies, they're capitalists and they're looking out for themselves and how they can get money.
they are looking to have a good time. They are looking to benefit themselves. Also, I mean, Skip seems to be as much of a burnout as he is. He's a pretty high functioning burnout. But Robin has an agenda, and it's clear that she has a plan and she wants something. And we do hear some pretty great details about her. So many juicy nuggets to savor about her. She served time. She loves Jane Fonda. And after she got out of prison, she's been making a living as a author of, as she calls them, historical romance rape novels.
Which she says with a lot of rape and adverbs.
Right. So this is officially the first episode of the Nicole Robinette podcast. That was Robin's pen name, and there's going to be lots of stuff to dig into. But this really did jump out at me. Is that like they're in a good spot, and we talked a little bit about this with Tom. But they don't need to be doing what it is that they're about to do. Skip knows that he's going to get set up, and basically he's always had a thing for her. He still lusts after her. She's seducing him. For what? We don't know exactly. So Robin has gotten her hooks into Skip, and they're going to go hang out at her place, do a little acid like the old days, see what happens. Now Chris, as partially because He was just at work where somebody exploded, and he is visiting with a shrink. And this is kind of a unique chapter because I don't think Elmore does this too often, where he'll have a chapter that's a, essentially two people getting pretty deep into conversation, and then Chris is facing off against this psychiatrist who is not necessarily a likable guy, but as the chapter goes on and as the book goes on, he makes some really good points about Chris.
He does. Yeah, I think it's at first you think the doctor's kind of a jerk. You're on Chris's side, but I think for sure you kind of learn more about the traumatic event that Chris talks about in the Vietnam War.
Right.
That certainly seems like kind of unresolved trauma, and Chris is trying to ignore it or doesn't think it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. I mean, he was in Vietnam. He was working effectively on the bomb squad. Or no, was he working in intelligence? I think he was actually working in intelligence. There were some South Vietnamese army officials who claimed to have a someone who had information about the North Vietnamese. Chris was trying to talk to the guy and sees that, and this is an elderly guy. It's an old farmer. Who knows where he stands politically, but he's not a participant in any way of of the war. They have him essentially standing on a live grenade with his foot holding the grenade together, and the guy's freaking out. And Chris is supposed to interrogate him, but the guy's losing his mind. All of the other the South Vietnamese army officers and the U.S. army officers basically just leave Chris there to try to sort this out, and he doesn't do it. The guy gets blown up, and Chris's legs get beat up. He takes a lot of shrapnel, and that's the end of the war for him.
It's kind of like the opening scene, though. The soldiers are kind of flipped, and they don't care that this old guy, is gonna die, and Chris is now on the opposite side,
Right.
where he doesn't care about Booker.
That's really interesting.
This is like such a formative, war experience for him, where he's the only guy who's trying to help this old man.
Yeah. We don't really get a sense that it ever slows him down physically.
You mean his injury to the legs, the shrapnel?
Correct. Yeah. But
it's not really mentioned again, actually.
Yeah, it's not really mentioned again, but you can't help but think that it's had a pretty big impact on how he makes his way through the world. And just sort of a quick note, we also never know the psychiatrist's name, and so one of the things that they're having this whole conversation. We're getting a lot of information about Chris. He was a couple years older. We learned that in the previous chapter, we learned that Robin and Skip went to University of Michigan. We learn also that Chris was at University of Michigan. He was probably a couple years ahead of them. But then he enlisted in the war because he was basically he knew he was going to get drafted anyway because he was flunking out. So we're learning a little bit about Chris's backstory, a little bit about his life, his where he stood on the war. At the end of it, we hear that, well, he's not just transferring out of the bomb squad, he's transferring into sex crimes. And why might that be? It's a legit question. So that's it. It makes us wonder a little bit more about Chris, about okay, well, what's driving this guy? So we get back with Robin and Skip, and we're at Robin's place. It's sort of interesting. So Robin's mom lives in a pretty nice area of Detroit, but Robin is she's got her own place.
It's right around the corner from Mario's.
Yeah. Which
it's currently a nice area. It used to be one of the worst
oh yeah,
in all of Detroit, and now it's like upscale shops and stuff like that.
Oh, well, if only Robin would have held on to her apartment
30 plus years. Yeah.
Yeah, she'd be doing great.
But I like that you mentioned the mother, though, because that seems to be a theme in the book. Like when we talked about Rum Punch, where what people were doing and acting their age and having their last shot, that seemed to be a recurring theme. In this one, there's so many mentions of mothers.
Yeah.
Robin says, my mother drove me to jail, and
Mm-hmm.
Skip's, barely talks to his mom. And we've got, of course, Mark and Woody's mom that we'll meet later.
who set this whole thing off. We'll learn.
And then, well, one of the scenes near the end of the book, it happens to be Mother's Day.
Right. And in Chris's mom, passed away
Exactly.
when he was younger. We learn, and he's got a pretty interesting dynamic with his dad, who we'll get into. We'll meet him, soon enough. But yeah, I thanks for bringing that up, because there is something very bizarre about Robin and her mom. But
She's on an extended cruise.
an extended. I did not know about. Have you ever heard of something called? There is a boat called the World. Have you heard of this thing? It's a cruise ship.
I think yeah, but you basically move in and you're like permanently a resident of a cruise. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and you're just.
Yeah. They were just talking about it on John Mulaney has like a variety show on Netflix.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They had a
I.
cruise episode. They talked about it.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. Well, I missed that one. I know somebody who. We have a friend whose aunt had been married to a very, very, very wealthy person, um, and then got divorced, and they had a very specific prenuptial agreement where she didn't get much money when the marriage ended, but as part of their arrangement, their agreement, she got one of these rooms, one of these suites on this boat, and that is like her permanent residence, and she's just sailing around the world, and everything is provided for, and it sounds completely hellish
That's
to me.
wild. That's that's part of her settlement, or the marriage settlement. She just gets to like be a cruise person forever.
Well, they sell them essentially like condos,
Yeah.
and so yeah, they had a, I don't know if they shared it or what, but she got that, and there's, I guess there's like a HOA fee to kind of pay for utilities and such, um, and yeah, that's her. I, I don't know what else she does. I don't know that. I don't know her that well, but I just hear
That's
about her from
basically
time
what
to time.
Robin's mother's doing.
And Rob, yeah,
She she's one of the many absent mothers of this book.
not to completely get off track, but I know Elmore bought his mom a motel down in Pompano Beach, Florida, which we're gonna hear about and talk about, for sure when we do some Florida themed episodes. Were they particularly close? Were they like? Do you know
They
much
were, yeah.
about?
Elmore's
Yeah.
mother lived with Elmore and his wife Beverly for years when they were first married. Because he was kind of a mama's boy, from what I understand.
Oh yeah.
And Beverly finally, I think it was years in, she'd had enough. She'd asked Elmore to have her leave, and she gave him an ultimatum, which she said, "I'm going on a trip, and when I come back, she better be gone or I will be."
Oh my God, that's amazing. My grandmother gave my grandfather many of ultimatums, and that's a different podcast. All right, so Robin and Skip are hanging out. We're in Robin's apartment. They're talking about the past. They're talking about all the good times. Robin has acid for Skip. He loves acid. He starts talking about it, about how much he loves it. She's known how to work this guy for over 20 years. And so it's very easy for her to manipulate him. And it's a really unique dynamic. I mean, Skip is clearly very comfortable being.
He's kind of a go with the flow dude.
He's a go with the flow dude, but he's very explicitly saying, "You're setting me up. You're going to take advantage of me. Like he says something about like, oh, you need the skipper to do something, and so you're going to give me some acid to get me to go along." But she's successful. He lets her do this stuff to him. There is a really cool, and I'm guessing Elmore didn't do a lot of acid, but you tell me if I'm wrong. There is
He
as
was just a
Skip,
weed smoker.
just a weed smoker. Skip is tripping on acid, and as Robin is talking to him, we're basically getting Skip's point of view, and he's essentially seeing her face melt away and her skull uh, as as she's talking to him. And it's a wild chapter for how they're interacting, but also what they're talking about, which is basically Robin is certain that it was Mark Ricks and Woody Ricks, two brothers who they were at school with. Woody was sort of a loser. Mark was the cool guy and would participate in all the marches, um, and then afterwards go have drinks. She's convinced that it was them, that it was Mark and Woody who sold them out. And the reason why Robin and Skip went to prison was because of that. This, and it raises up
But
one of
he's
the.
still not even. I mean, Skip even says, "What if it wasn't Woody and Mark that got us busted?"
Uh huh.
And at this point, Robin says, "Well, what difference does it make? They have their
Exactly.
scam figured out, so she doesn't even care."
That is exactly who they are. Skip is along for the ride, and he admits it. He admits it, that he's just there to have a good time. We haven't met Mark and Woody yet, but we know they're in Robin's crosshairs. So Chris and Phyllis are no more, and this is very sad for everybody. She has really freaked out, and Chris has to move in with his dad, Art. And Art is a retired guy. I don't think it's ever explicitly mentioned that he was. I mean, he does feel like he probably served in World War II. He had a successful paving business. It turns out he's living a pretty great life.
He does live in Grosse Pointe, though, which becomes a problem for Chris because Detroit cops have to live in the city of Detroit. But for temporarily, Chris is just bunking up with his old dad.
And his dad is hanging out with a lovely old gal named Esther.
Because Chris's mom had a 3-year fight with cancer and died. And the room Chris is staying in still has, that's where her hospital bed was, but it still has all the old family photos. Reminds Chris of that time.
And so that their dynamic is, I wouldn't call them particularly close, but I also would guess it was not unusual.
Well, so yeah, one thing about it, we find out in the third chapter that Chris's birthday is October 7, which is Peter Leonard's birthday, Elmore's son, my father.
Oh, really?
And we also get a story where Art says, you remember when I told you about the facts of life at Little Harry's? This is pulled from Elmore and Peter's real life.
Oh, tell me more.
They went to this place, Little Harry's, that it's been long closed, but it was known as kind of the cool place that like ad guys would go to hang out. And after they saw Our Man in Havana with Alec Guinness, who at this point has already been accosted in a bookstore because the bouncer, the security guy, thought he was stealing an Elmore Leonard book. So I think this is Elmore giving him a thumbs up or something. But basically, this is what happened in real life. Elmore took his sons to lunch at Little Harry's, and he told them the facts of life. And one of them said, "You do that to Mom?" And that's just pulled straight from real life.
Do we know, was that Peter who said that, or do we know which?
Bill said it was Peter.
Oh my
So
God.
we'd have to get Peter on to find out. I wasn't there. But there is, Esther, Art's girlfriend, thinks that Chris looks like Robert Redford. And there was even a review at the time the book came out that said, like, oh, it's the laziest, comparison. My character looks like Robert Redford. But I have to say, my father did kind of look like Robert Redford.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's another, I think, pulled from real life. I'll send you a young photo of him. Of him
man.
when he's in his, maybe late 20s, early 30s.
This post-Italian prison photo, if you don't mind.
Yes. So slightly shorter hair.
No, but there's so many laugh out loud funny parts of this book. That is definitely one of them. I do have to ask though, how old were the kids? And this is just like your dad and your uncles, not your aunts.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a decent, I think it's I want to say 7 years, 6 or 7 years difference between them. So,
So,
I mean,
well, hang on. We gotta look up. We gotta look up. All right, bear with us, everyone. So let's see. Our Man in Havana, 1959. Does that sound right?
yeah, but I don't know. Maybe because I think Peter's born in 51. So, I mean, honestly, I looked up the movie too because I wanted to see how it would line up with Freaky Deaky, and it doesn't really. Like, of course, the movie's out, but it wouldn't be new.
Yeah.
You know, Chris is like, what is it? What is he? Late 30s in this? Like, it doesn't make
Uh,
any sense for them to go to this movie in 1958.
right. Well, I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of how old, because your dad is the oldest brother, right?
Yes.
So Elmore gave your dad and his two younger brothers all 8 and under the talk.
He gave him the talk. Well, I don't think they were 8 and under. I don't think we can use Our Man in Havana as the as evidence.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. It's pretty great to be the Hiram Walker margarita mix guy and the you do that to mom guy. That's not bad. So, facts of life have been shared and absorbed, and Robin's on the prowl, and we.
Oh, Judd, do you remember? I don't know if it made it to the episode, but I was wearing a shirt of Danny D. And
Yeah.
I told you he's the Rod Stewart impersonator with Tourette's who has a terrible voice.
Yeah.
Uh, the place they go to, Brownies, where Robin first runs into Mark again, that was a regular. It's closed now, but only for a couple years. That was a regular Danny D haunt.
Oh,
He was playing Brownies, once a month for years.
Brownies appears pretty frequently in this book. It shows up a few times.
It does, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because Chris goes there later. It must just be like close to wherever Chris's dad's apartment is.
Yeah, well, it's right near the. I believe it's near the Rensen.
Well, it's got to be far enough away that it's in Grosse Pointe. They talk about that the boat, that
Yes.
The cruise. It's it goes from Grosse Pointe, goes to Detroit, kind of goes to Joe Louis Arena and circles back. Proto Martyr, for our fourth record, we chartered a boat.
Oh,
And
really?
we had our record release show. It was called the Detroit Princess. We had something like 6 or 7 bands play. And midway through this show, the boat did a little river cruise under the bridge through, past the skyline of the city. It was amazing. We did not have
That's
someone
awesome.
like Woody Ricks using the buffet as their own personal, dinner table, but
There's always your next album. Now, this is going to tell you how often I get invited to things by musicians. But do you play at your own record release party, or is it the
Yeah.
other bands that play? You do.
yeah. Well, yeah, we
Okay.
do. I mean,
What,
it's kind of
do you
like
play
a
the whole
kickoff party
album?
or something. We used to, not anymore. It's kind of when people haven't really heard you, I think it's fine. But the audience reception to stuff they haven't heard is, it can be good, but to play a whole album of songs they probably haven't heard is, I think, asking a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But yeah, the release show is usually great. It's just like more people are hyped. It's like a bigger deal. It's automatically a bigger deal for people, especially if you play, frequently. That's like the big one always.
but who gets invited? Do the fans get to go, or is this like just like friends
Oh,
and
yeah.
family and like record?
Oh no, I mean when we say record release, it usually just means like the hometown big show that celebrates the album.
Is there food?
No, I mean at the boat there was. We had we had a lot of stuff.
What does it cost to put on a concert on a boat in Detroit?
It costs a lot. We actually had like sponsors for that one,
Oh, nice.
but we tried to keep the price cheap.
I hear you. Well, Robin, like me, Robin was not able to attend your show, but she is going after the Ricks brothers. She's hanging out at Brownies, waiting for the boat to come in. There's a charity cruise happening. It happens to be the same charity cruise that Art and Esther are traveling on. But we also know that there's another person who gets introduced, and that is Donnell. So we've heard about Mark and Woody, but also Donnell, who Skip is really threatened by, really jealous of. He knows there was a romantic Robin and Donnell hooked up 20 some years ago at the Ricks mansion. when Skip hears that Danelle is going to be there, he gets a little nervous, and he goes from being pretty laid back, pretty funny, go with the flow, as you said, Alex, to getting kind of nasty and getting mean. And it's a different side of Skip. So Skip is not with her as she's waiting, but she's just hanging out. And Mark Rick sees her. At first, Robin is hell bent on revenge, but pretty much as soon as she and Mark starts talking, like, her plans start to change. I don't know if it's she sees that. What is it, Alex, about their conversation that you think?
I think she's constantly shifting. I think her
Yeah,
con is not thought out. She has no like morals or compunctions that are in stone. It's just, oh, I've talked to this guy. I think we can change the plan. But like Robin and Skip, Mark is also similarly stuck in the past. He's still trying to relive seeing the Doors, and
yeah,
they talk about this Goose Lake Music Festival, which is it's like the year after Woodstock. It's in Michigan. It's the same kind of scale, same type of bands. But I mean, I don't feel like most people talk about Woodstock as a big disaster. That was like a mud pit with not enough bathrooms. But they say Goose Lake is like if Woodstock was run well. It's funny to me because it's like, well, I guess that, nobody cares about that because who talks about Goose Lake?
yeah. Mark and Woody are there. Danelle is there. They've just been celebrating, having a good time. We learn a little bit about what Mark and Woody have been up to. He would love to be producing rock concerts with cool bands like the Doors, who aren't really around anymore.
But yeah, his big plan is to sign Iggy Pop and make him a pop star.
He's got all kinds of plans, but he can't do any of them because after we learn that after Mrs. Ricks, their Mark and Woody's mom died, all the money went to Woody. And Woody's in charge. For whatever reason, mom liked Woody better, and Woody's got all the money. He controls it, and he could finance Mark's operation to be a big rock promoter in Detroit. But instead, he likes musicals, and he wants Mark to produce musical theater.
He's also like a debilitated drunk. And we learn secondhand pretty soon about his behavior on this charity cruise from Art.
Yeah, he's although there is, I mean, this is something I'll pose to you now, and we can revisit it as the book goes on. But the one thing about Woody is he's definitely, I don't know if I'd call him a full-fledged character just because he's so intoxicated for
Yeah.
most of the time, and yet he is able to stay pretty much a step ahead of everybody throughout the book. And so it just raised the question, like, do you think Woody, he's described as essentially he's somebody that people only hang out with because he's rich. And I think that eventually people become somewhat self-aware of who they are and who they're surrounded by and why. Do you think that Woody is putting any of this on? Do you think he's really this drunk the whole time? It just seems to me that someone who was so drunk for so long would not have been able to stay ahead of the pack.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're giving him more credit than I would. I think there's a few scenes where he seems more aware than he lets on, but I don't think he's like secretly a mastermind or something.
Well, I don't. I'm not saying he's a mastermind. I just think that he's got. I mean, he really is. Woody and his money are the MacGuffin, rightly or wrongly. I mean, everyone's got their own reasons for going after him, but everyone is going after him.
Yeah.
And so when it's we'll revisit it and we'll see how we feel about Woody at the end. But so we've got Woody, we've got Mark, we've got Danelle, we've got Robin. Mark invites her back to their house. They're gonna have a little party at the mansion. There's also a young woman that it's first seemed like Mark was with red hair, but he sort of ignores her, and they all go back to the mansion, and this young woman is Greta, who we'll meet before too long, but she's with them as well. So we pick it up the next morning, basically, and this is where I really fell in love with Art, just because he's telling him about the night before. Art is telling Chris they were at the marina for I think the quote is, They were on a boat to raise money for some foundation that has to do with promoting culture. Esther's into all that. So
She's into culture.
I just kind of fell in love with him. So they're catching up, but we're also,
Does he remind you of Marshall Cisco at all? I feel like there's like the kind of wiser father character that
yeah, but he doesn't
is
seem
trying to give good advice, but doesn't push too hard.
I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting comparison because both Marshall and Karen are it's father and daughter who are living together after the death of the mom
Yeah,
from cancer, and the same situation here between Art and Chris. I don't think Art is as
kind of talking about relationship problems too.
yeah. No, that is true. That is definitely true. I think there's a little bit more. Karen is the one who's a law enforcement officer who is shacking up with bank robbers. Chris is a law enforcement officer who is not, and yet Art is much more judgmental about Chris's
Yeah.
choices than Marshall is about Karen's. So no, I don't, and maybe it's funny because maybe it's because in the book in Out of Sight, Marshall is compared to Walter Matthau. When we were talking with Tom Sharpling, I mentioned that after a few times reading Freaky Deaky, I started thinking about Art being played by Rodney Dangerfield. That sort of stuck.
Oh, that'll change. Yeah, that'll change the character.
Art's got delivery,
Yes.
but it's interesting. There's a lot of parallels. The Mankowskis.
Yeah, it's certainly
and the
differences too. It
Siscos.
just, yeah, I thought that, yeah, there's something about him that's similar just because we just read Out of Sight not long ago.
Yeah. So we hear a little bit about what Woody was like on the boat, and we get a sense of how much money Woody has. He's rich enough that no one's going to bother him as he eats directly out of a buffet tray.
Oh, I like the detail that he has a, martini and just throws the glass off the side of the boat.
Woody he's just in his own world, and he gets away with it because he's got so much money. Now, did Elmore have any obscenely rich people in his life who drove him crazy?
I mean, I was trying to think of that because when they talk about people being this wealthy, it's like only with the most negative connotations.
Right.
They talk about, yeah, like Woody has all this money and he can do whatever he wants and he just gets drunk, has nothing to say for himself, doesn't do anything. It's a really sad existence. The thing I'm more struck by, though, is Elmore putting some of his own drinking habits on Woody. I mean, we don't find out about it till later, but, we talk
Yeah.
about Woody having stomach problems and, something like called acute gastritis.
Oh,
And this is what Woody has. It's very uncommon with younger people, even younger drinkers, but Elmore had it as well.
oh wow.
And I can't help but think when Woody talks about drinking his Bloody Marys as his hangover cure, because he thought that red things were good for a hangover.
Yeah.
It's so specific, and I know Elmore used to love Bloody Marys, so I'm like, is that pulled from his own brain? Did he think red drinks reverse the curse?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he got that from Peter. But no, yeah, Woody he's a complicated. I mean, it's hard to describe him as a character because he barely qualifies as a person,
Yes.
as we will continue to see. So while Art is telling Chris about his night out on the town, on the water with Esther, Robin and Skip are getting caught up. Robin has she spent the night with Mark, and this is all part of her plan. She's getting Skip in on it, and she's pretty convinced that Mark would go along if, after she realizes that Mark is pretty miserable and that Woody has all the money, Robin realizes that, oh, well, maybe it would be worth it for Mark if we took out Woody. So she enlists Skip into, getting some dynamite to really get Woody out of the picture. And, Skip knows enough about buying explosives that even in the 1980s, people paid attention to that kind of a thing. So he goes out into the country and basically waits for a farmer to go buy a bunch of dynamite so he can rob it from him. So he doesn't have to give anybody his ID or anything like that. So Skip's out of town for a couple of days, and Robin uses that time to reach out to Mark and just sort of flirt with him, and tells him that way back in the day, she calls him out of the blue. Mark's at work and basically says, "You want to hear something funny?" And she reads him a passage from her diary where she claims to have written that she thinks she's in love with Mark Ricks. So Mark is hooked. So we keep going, and this is where Chris is. He's gone. He's back at work. He's in his new job at Sex Crimes. He's not sure how he's going to feel about it. He's staying at his dad's place. He's driving his dad's car. He's doing a job he's not sure
Because
he
his
likes.
car was stolen. It's a common thing in Detroit. Car theft, arsons, and car theft. They're very common.
Chris's car gets stolen. Greta's car, we'll see. It's a rough. It's tough to park in Detroit. Yeah, so it's Chris's first day in Sex Crimes, and Greta walks in. This is a tough scene, and I think I don't know how Elmore would write the scene today. I definitely think that like this is collectively we've evolved a little bit when it comes to Sex Crimes, because yeah, I mean this beautiful girl, I mean late 20s, comes in to report a rape, and Chris is kind of checking her out, and
Yeah, he talks about how her legs move in her skirt, and
to Greta's credit, she's pretty tough, and she's not particularly impressed with Chris's approach, or how seriously he's taking the situation. And maybe Chris doesn't know how seriously to take the situation. It is his first day. There's an awkwardness to it, I think, just based on what's happening between these two people on the page, but also reading it today versus reading it in 1988. We might be
for sure. But
it.
I do think there's enough, gray area and weirdness to his character that it's not like I'm not trying to throw 2025 readings into an older book.
Yeah.
I think that there's enough darkness to his character that it fits with that reading. It's not till later in the book where he starts doing his own kind of shakedowns, and then there's a portion of a chapter where he's like envisioning in his mind what he can get away with, or if he tells this person at this time, and if it's all him trying to skirt the rules. Like, he knows all this stuff is wrong.
Right.
So I think it goes back to the opening scene with Booker too, where it's like, I mean, I think he could have done more to prevent a guy from blowing up. I mean,
yeah,
they're all minor, grand scheme things. He's not like, I don't know, he's not extorting, every criminal. He's not assaulting Greta. It's just more like he knows these things are wrong, and I think that matters.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. But Chris's first day is not going great. He is insulted by Greta when she storms out because she's not particularly impressed with how he's handling the situation. We do learn that she's an actor, and not an actress, but an actor, and that she was auditioning for a role at one of the theaters, at the theater that Mark and Woody own. After Greta leaves, Chris is on his way to get himself a drink. And I don't know if this is in the middle of the day or not. I'm not totally clear on this.
I think he said she rolled in at after 4:00. So
okay, all right. So end of the day. But he's going to get a drink, and he sees a limo with a license plate that says Woody.
It's another one of not Chris's finest moments. He kind of racially profiles Donnell.
Yeah, but he wouldn't. He's only doing it because of the license plate.
Is he?
Yeah.
Hassling Donnell because he knows he's connected to Woody?
Yeah, because Greta came in and just accused Woody of rape. That's how I look at it.
All right.
I think if it was a different license plate and he did it, I would agree with you 100%. But he sees the Woody plate. And there's a funny little aside where Chris is sort of thinking about not being a cop and maybe working in computers or robotics, which is pretty great. But he does start. He asks about, and he's asking where's Woody, and Danelle basically is saying, look, I know I shouldn't be parking here, but I am, and I work for Woody, and he's inside doing his thing, and it's fine. And this is where we really meet Danelle. Danelle he's appears to be the chauffeur, but very quickly he's clearly much more than that. And he and Chris start to go back and forth a little bit, but Danelle is not taking anything. He's not letting Chris push him around at all. He's pushing back, and which I think elevates the situation a little bit. But Danelle comes off
Danelle's
as
right. I think.
well, I think he comes off as somebody who he's been pushed around by the cops a lot, and now he's in a situation where he knows he really understands the levers of power in from a financial and political standpoint, and he knows because he's connected to Woody that he can push back at Chris or any cop, and he does. He tells Chris pretty clearly, like, you're just like any other cop, dumb as shit. And that does obviously get under Chris's skin, and they're going back and forth. And the temperature rises, but then it does kind of cool off a little bit. But then Woody shows up, and Greta's chasing him. And she's throwing things at him, and and she sees Chris, and she's basically like, Chris, get him, he's here. And it's sort of an insane scene, and it leads to what I think is the best arrest ever. So Woody he's kind of defending himself, but he also just sort of shoves her. She falls up against a brick wall and hits her head and gets dazed.
He's a very large man, so I don't think it would be hard for him to kind of toss her off to the side.
Right. Yeah, no. I mean, he's not necessarily trying, to hurt her, but at the same time, he is clearly not acting like a gentleman. But so, Chris basically goes into cop mode and tells Danelle not to do anything. Woody gets in the car and just starts munching on his penis. Chris starts munching on his peanuts. Chris goes to see if Greta's okay, and she's fine, but she's shaken up. This is all enough for Chris he has witnessed an assault, a physical assault. So he's got enough to basically arrest Woody. The problem is he can't get Woody out of the back of the car. And Woody is a big dude who is completely drunk, completely oblivious, completely self-absorbed, not paying attention to the world. I think he's watching the People's Court on the TV in the limo. And Danelle is basically saying, you're not going to arrest this guy. You can't arrest this guy. And Chris calls their bluff. And I actually thought this was a good moment for Chris. He calls their bluff. He tells Greta to get in the front of the car. He gets in the back with Woody, and he makes Danelle drive them all to jail. And I got to be honest. I think this was peak Chris. I think it was a great moment.
I mean, yeah, his plan seems to work, except that Danelle was right the entire time, and the whole situation blows up in Chris's face.
Yeah, like I said, I think it was a nice moment.
Yes,
but it was a tactical victory, not a strategic one. Okay, so that will do it for part 1 of Freaky Deaky. We are just getting started, so take a break, reread the book quickly. If you don't have a copy, you can borrow mine. Grab some peanuts, get some acid, get some dynamite, and get ready for part 2 of Freaky Deaky on the Elmore Leonard podcast. The Elmore Leonard podcast is produced and edited by Judd Rubin. Music by Greg Deaky. Hosted by Judd Rubin and Alex Leonard. Executive produced by Peter Leonard. Copyright 2025, Elmore Leonard Inc. Please visit us at elmoreleonardofficial.com or send us an email at hello@theelmoreleonardpodcast.com.